let's hope that we don't have similar issues to what we did earlier this week, because that was a pain. I'm just putting a little stool next to me so I have something to set my water bottle on. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to pick up where we left off. I didn't do any of the rest of the level that we were working on like off stream or anything because I wanted to finish it on stream. We left off making this monstrosity of a level. So we have like, this is the outside. Let's see, go up. Yep. So we start by doing some platforming. We platform around and around and around and around and around and around. Then we have an entrance to a different level, which we'll probably also start doing some stuff for today. It's likely just going to be like a square with a door in it, and that's it. So nothing too much. And then we do some more platforming, and then we go all the way around through like this room with the two drills in it. So we platform up to here, onto this drill, go onto this drill, do a little bit of extra platforming through here, back to the top of this drill, and then we get to here where we platform around, go outside, and then what we'll end up doing most likely is just kind of doing like a U-bend. So that we end up... What the fuck is going on here? I don't know. Let's move that out of the way. There we go. So that we end up in a place where we can pick up the key that's corresponding with this level, and then just immediately like jump all the way back down, and we'll be back at the bottom because we don't have full damage anyway in this entire game. What's up with all these things sticking out of places where... Oh, that's why. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Let's snap these with units of 100, and then I guess what we do is there we go. Is that important? Not really, no. But it's going to bother me otherwise, so might as well get that fixed up. Like, this is also going to bother me. This is all going to get replaced anyway. This is block mesh stuff. So, this last little bit is going to be relatively straightforward, I imagine. Just mostly static platforming all the way up. So you kind of just like take this thing and do stuff with it. So what we end up with in the end, right? Let's start with that. Is this thing just being about like half this size? So that will be about 2,000. But then leave a little bit of room for like a hole to jump down back into. So let's say 1,500. Yeah, so something like this, right? And then we end up with a little bit of a almost like a chimney type thing. And the actual height of this we'll worry about in a moment. It's probably going to need to be like a little bit higher than this. And we'll end up having... give it a moment, we'll get there. Like a little platform here, which, oh, all of these things fucking need to exist. Oh, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. As well as this one. We're not working in the right level. We're working in the persistent level. We need to be working into 4 platforming. But we can just move to selected level, and now we're inside that level anyway. So it's fine. Nobody's gonna die. Well, we're all gonna die. So why am I even bothering doing this? We're all gonna be dead somewhere anyway. Well, that turned dark fairly quickly. Nihilism. Fun. So the reason that I realized that is because... No. We're going to put a key down here. Now, this key doesn't really do anything at the moment, but we'll get that sorted out later. But we pick up that key and then we can like jump back down. And from there, you could even like jump down and maneuver your way to like landing either on here or just straight into the door if you really wanted to. So yeah, from there, I think it is literally mostly just as easy as kind of just doing this. I don't really need this to be particularly like intense platforming. I'll probably put in some flamethrowers in between because why wouldn't I? I just need all the jumps to be like entirely possible. Is that 200 units or is that 300? I think it's 300. Yeah, 3. So one more. This doesn't need to be difficult. This doesn't need to be like anything special. This just needs to be... well, literally just this. And then one more, I guess. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more happening here than that. I think a little bit more happening would probably be good, but this is a good starting point. We can start tweaking a little bit from there. So all these need to be 200 higher as well, I guess. Zero too much. There we go. So what are we going to do for the floor? For this entire area? I think it doesn't need to be like that big. I want this to feel like it's not very developed yet. And not as not as in like very developed from a game development perspective. I mean like in world. I want this to feel like they were just getting started on like making an extra tunnel here when everybody died. So this is like the last leftover part of the next part to the project. And then the next part never fucking happened. Because they were the dead. So that's why this is smaller and more simplistic and all that kind of stuff. I'm not just saying that to not have to do more work. Obviously not. I mean, I'm legitimately not. That I legitimately, like, I actually mean that. But it's also nice that I don't have to do more work because there's already a bunch of... If I didn't want to do more work, do you really think that I would be making, like, any of this? This entire thing is just me doing unnecessary amounts of work for just about everything. So I don't think cutting corners is really like a thing that we have to worry about. Yeah, so if we just like make this wall right there, we can at least make a couple of these jumps be those platforms that fall away. I think that will help a bit in making this somewhat more interesting. Or maybe not, we'll see. Fuck, that don't line up today. Don't know why, but sure. Even then they don't line up. That's fucked. Not the most important thing right now though, so it's fine. It's fine. It's not really fine. It's annoying. I'm not looking forward to doing the actual art assets for this part. I'm not looking forward to doing the art assets for any part. To be 100% frank with you. But specifically this part is worrying me. Because this is going to be a lot of work and kind of difficult to like replace everything, I think. And I feel like this level specifically is going to require a bunch of like specific assets. So assets that I make specifically for this, right? And I might still divide this up into a couple of like sub-levels still, because I feel like maybe once all the assets are in place, it might be a little much to load all that in at once. We'll have to see. All right, so the walls and the floors are in place now, for the most part anyway. So let's make the walls a little bit taller so that we can actually like, put a ceiling on this thing as well. Probably should set this back to 100 at some point, but now I'm doing the ceiling height anyway at 50 unit intervals. I probably should keep it there. Just look at the outside of this thing, right? Even if I disable all the other levels in this world, so like the outside of this level alone looks like pretty monstrous. I said before that the other level that we did was definitely the biggest one. I think that was like the entrance hall, I think. That was the biggest level we'd made up until this point in the game, right? We made this and I was at the end of it. We pretty much spent like an entire stream, I believe, making this. And I was like, this is the biggest fucking level that I've ever done. I might have spent more than one stream doing this. Yeah, I don't think it's the biggest thing that I've done anymore. This new one is definitely bigger. Bigger doesn't mean better. I have been told. But I hope that this doesn't like set a trend for, as I keep designing new levels, that they become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because that means that the whole scope of the game, which is already way too big, is going to also grow bigger and bigger and bigger. Which means that this game is not going to actually be finished until like 2075. I should have said 2077. I've been playing Cyberpunk, which so far is it is a game that exists. Certainly. I like the aesthetic, I like the style, I like the graphics, man, it looks amazing. Gameplay so far is kind of like kind of mediocre. I'm only like 3 hours in or something. I haven't experienced much at all. But like the melee combat actually sucks ass. Which makes sense, it's mostly like a shooter game, right? So that's probably okay. I've been told that it gets better as you spec more like points into your like melee stats. I don't know if I find that to be a good excuse, to be honest with you. Anyway, we're making this game, not Cyberpunk, because oh man, I can't even imagine having to make that. Like, as much as I say that, yeah, okay, the gameplay so far is kind of mediocre, it's 1,000 times better than anything that I could make, realistically. So speaking of gameplay, how do I make this more interesting? Because it's not right now, right? Where is my save point even? I think I put it there. Dead Games. Hello. Alrighty. Let's just kind of jump through it. I am not in my most creatively active mindset right now because I've had a long day. Which sometimes means when you're tired, you come up with wild ideas, which are good. Sometimes that means that you just don't have a brain that does anything. I'm definitely in the latter category of that right now. That's already a too high jump, most likely. But the rest of these jumps seem... I really need to implement Coyote Time. But in order to implement Coyote Time, I need to rework a lot of the jumping stuff. I can't believe that Unreal doesn't have a built-in Coyote Time solution. Yeah, that's just too far. But it's also not that interesting to do this. So I don't know. Okay, I guess what we do. I have an ID. I don't know if it's a good ID, but I have an ID. An ID has been had. First and foremost, every single one of these. Needs to move over 100 units. Which means that every single one of these also needs to move over 100 units. Which means nothing more than that, I don't think. So we put in some fire hazards here. And these things are marvelously expensive to run because they produce a lot of fucking particles, man. But that'll be fine. Let's see, the distance between time and activation, particle size. We have another thing in here somewhere that... Right? Maybe not. Huh, okay. I thought I could set up how far away from each other these exist. But maybe that's not a thing that I do. Create static meshes. Yeah, for some reason that's tied to particle size. Okay, sure. So this is a lot of them. It's probably too much going on here. We'll see. My basic idea is to... Did I copy him yet? Nope. Okay, so my basic idea would be to copy this over and offset these in a way that you have to kind of hurry through. Not all the way up, just 2 or 3 of them. But that gives you something to do for these. And then I can have a different gimmick for the next 3 and so on and so forth. And that gives some engagement happening on these things. So then this one, okay, so we'll do that way, right? We'll do this one is safe, this one is safe, and this one is safe. And then on all of these, we'll put some kind of traps or whatever. So for these, maybe what we'll do is we'll put these in between instead. Just need to make sure that you can't like go diagonally, which is always an issue with these things. So that doesn't make you like run through them more quickly, but it makes it so that you can't just mindlessly jump from one to the next. And that's like the only actually like super important part about these. So we do that. And then these last ones we need to offset them though. These ones not necessarily maybe, but these ones definitely. So their passive time being 4 seconds is probably enough. Then the time between active and okay, so we do a delay start time of 0. I guess then this is 4. Maybe this is 2. I don't know how this works. And then this one will be 4, right? So it would be this one goes active for 2 seconds. Let's just run it. My brain isn't braining. I shouldn't worry about this too much. They're pretty much going in like a good sequence here. I think that's like not too punishing, but it makes it so that you can't just like dilly-dally around. And this is definitely too easy. But I have an idea for that. Makes the platform a little bit more precise, maybe a little too much. We'll see. And we'll do the same offset for these ones. So that will be 0 for this, and 2 for the next, and 4 for the one after that. Which still essentially is the same thing as these, but now it's coming from the side, so it feels different. Hopefully. Oh, let's go in the wrong direction. That's fine. All right. So yeah, we jump through this one, which is a commitment because the moment you jump through this one, you're gonna need to like keep on moving, otherwise you get messed up. I think that works. You know what? You know fucking what? There we go. That's going to make that jump just a bit easier. I might end up tweaking that a little bit as we go into like the art assets section of the level, but for now, this will do. That's definitely too many particles, man. Although it's not really impacting my frame rate, so I guess that's good. This jump is just too annoying to make for all of them. So I guess we just take all these and do like one of those. For this one, that's fine. For most of these, you'll probably be able to hang off of them as well. You can't right now because of the blockout thing. But that's good. If we just test out everything with... Oh, no. If we test everything out without being able to rely on the hanging mechanic, then the hanging mechanic will actually serve its purpose, that being a grace mechanic. And not a core platforming mechanic. So we have that one, and that one, and that one, and then we need to be real fucking quick about it. Well, not that quick actually. It's kind of fine. And then these last ones we just kind of jump up over. Well, that's fine. And then we can go all the way down, which takes a minute. Voila. Yeah, I think I like that. Obviously don't need to put any ladders up here. So that effectively is just... We'll probably come back to this area here at some point to tweak it a little bit before we actually go in and do any art stuff, because I feel like some tweaking will be needed here. But for now, this feels pretty good. And that means that we can say that this platformer level is more or less officially done, which means that we can move on to the next one. Sweet! And the next one is... Give a moment. Move all these out a little bit so that they don't overlap. This one, which is going to be just, again, a room with a door in it. So we'll make a lot of progress today. We'll finish off 2 entire level blockouts, because there's nothing to block out here. It's literally a queue. It's literally a block out. But there's going to be a door in here that leads to a different room, and then we can actually start doing the boss room as well. Which itself also is probably going to rely pretty heavily on art assets. I'll probably block out kind of the rough shape of where the art assets are going to be, I think, to get a good feel for the room. But I think for the most part, we'll probably finish up most of the rest of the dungeon today, which is good, because we've been doing this for a hot minute. Where did the checkpoint go? Yeah, so the checkpoint I'm going to just place... I don't know, where am I going to place the checkpoint? Where does it make sense to place the checkpoint? Smack in the middle of it? What even is this pivot point? I don't know. I probably just broke something. I don't know what. Does it make sense to put it just in the middle? I don't think this thing is in the middle of anything either, actually. I think this is... Is this centered? Hold on. This thing is 4,100 units in the X. So half of that would be 2,050. Yeah, that's definitely not even close to being centered. Now it's close to being centered. These doors feel pretty good though. Let's give that another. Well, actually, they do stick out a little bit, so maybe that... I'm just going to assume Everything is fine. Not pull too much. Let's look at everything on wireframe from like top-down mode. Well, that doesn't help a lot, does it? Bunch of shit that needs to be turned off first. Okay. Yeah, so the center is literally just this, right? Which means that these are decently well aligned. Well enough. Wait, why are you suddenly so small? What the hell is going on? Top-down view is weird. Anyway, so this has a checkpoint in the middle of the level, because that makes sense, because I say so. Then we need to effectively just make these ladders pop out or pop into existence when we reach certain thresholds. I think. Because we can like make animations for it, but I don't really feel like doing that, is the thing. So I'm thinking just like when we reach that's a good question. I was going to say when we reach right over here, but then we'll see it pop into existence, which you probably don't want, right? But then at what point do you not see it pop into existence? I guess like this platform over here. So when we reach this, we make the ladder pop into existence. But then the last two jumps are entirely unnecessary. The question is, does that matter? I would argue that probably not, because like even nobody's going to know that. That's the thing, right? There's a very slim chance that a lot of people are going to figure out that this platform specifically triggers that ladder to spawn in. And even if that happens to be like found out or something, that only matters if you mess up one of these last two jumps, fall all the way down, and at that point you can just like go back and climb the ladder if you want to. Which, I mean, sure. Yeah, I think we're going to do the thing here. So do we have a built-in way to like just make the actor entirely... If I set the entire actor hidden in game, does it still have functionality? I'm going to go ahead and guess yes, because it works on the trigger box. I also need to make an animation for that. Yeah, so this still works. But that's easy to fix, actually. I don't like how it doesn't show up in editor as a result of that. So how do we fix that without like having to resort to hello, by the way? I guess we just make a thing with an input ladder enabled, new enabled. And then on begin play, we set ladder enabled to be default true, but we're going to be, well, actually, we'll make that a variable, which will be by default set to true. And why is it still screaming at me? What the fuck is it? Blueprint is weird sometimes, okay? There we go. So default enabled. And what that'll do is it'll just get our... Ooh, we don't have... okay, so this might be annoying. We need to keep a list of static mesh components as they get added, I think. Because we need to iterate over all of them and make them visible or invisible. So we, at the start of our construction script, we clear this because we're going to be like removing and adding new ones. And then for everyone that we add, we just add, right? For each loop over them, set visibility to whether or not it's enabled. And then we, for the box, generate overlap events. To that value as well. And then we just need a way to detect whether or not this thing has been interacted with. But I guess we can just use my like interaction GUID system for that. I'm sorry, what? What is that called again? Is that a C++ thing? Is that why it's not called WBI? Interaction class settings. Interaction interface. Okay. Name and consistency be damned, apparently. Interaction interface. There we go. Interaction. Get interaction info. Don't need that. Interact. I don't actually think that we need to do that because we have like I forget how we set this up, I'm not gonna lie. BP active get GUID. I think we need to look into the world item blueprint for this because so we use get GUID, which gets us the GUID. And then on begin play, what we do, I made a video on this, but I fucking don't remember. If object was triggered. And then we can do add triggered objects. All right, so we'll do that. And apparently that's not an interaction, that is within BP actor utils. Because, again, I fucking... Sure. Why not? So for now, we'll, at the very start here, check if this is valid. And if the default enabled is not true, so that's a not Boolean. Because if it's by default enabled, we don't need to really like worry about if we should like enable it at all. Help, hey yo. That's two different messages, man. Those are very different implications. If you need help, that's also fine, but hello. So yeah, we check both of those. If not both of those are true, we just move on. If both of those are true, well, actually, no. I almost made a mistake. What we're checking is if it's not enabled by default and we don't have a valid GUID, we need to set a new GUID. So new GUID. No help needed. Well, now I feel useless. No, that's fine. So yeah, if this is... Oh, actually, if this is not valid as well. So if our GUID is not valid, and our default enable is false, then we generate a new GUID. Otherwise, we just move on. Yeah, that's about everything there is to it, I believe. And then at begin play, instead of setting ladder default enabled, I guess what we do is we first check if GUID is valid, because if it is not, that means that it's not been given a GUID, which means that it's just going to go off the default value. But it's always going to be the case if default enabled is false, so we don't actually need to check that. So we'll do this slightly differently. We'll check if default enabled is true, because if so, we'll just enable the ladder. If default enabled is false, we'll check if object was triggered. And this doesn't return... Oh, that destroyed the actor. Whoops. So what we'll do instead is we'll use destroy if triggered. So if it contains this and destroy on triggered, we'll do the destruction thing. Otherwise, we'll just return a value. This way, it won't break anything that already exists. But we will now get a return value of this, which is important. So the destroy if triggered, the default value should probably be true, because everything so far has been assuming that that's the functionality as is. So we're going to disable that. That's world item. It's the wrong thing anyway. So yeah, need to be in a ladder. Reference to self. So if this object was triggered, what we do is we enable ladder. That's not how it works. Probably should have done that to begin with, but I guess we don't need that branch now. I think we can just like plug that through directly. So what we'll, okay, we check if by default this thing should be enabled, this ladder. If it is, we just enable it. It should already be enabled, but who cares? If it's not enabled by default, we check whether or not it is in the triggered list, which actually does this. Get UID is valid. Triggered object contains, sure. And then if it is in the list of triggered objects, we enable it. And if it's not in the list of triggered objects, we disable it. That works for me, I think. And then when we enable the ladder, I guess what we do is we also check if the default enable is false. We then add triggered objects. Self, and this already does an add unique, so it's not going to add the same thing twice. That's fantastic. So that should now, I think, let's remove the chest. If you look at this, default enabled is true. It's good. But if you look at this, default enabled will become false. So if we play this, the second ladder should be not visible and not functional and crash the engine. Okay. Cool. Huh. Why? I don't know if I saved all those changes. I hope I did. But hey, at least the internet's not fucking with me anymore. Well, at least for now. That's good. Open up all those assets, that's fine. So where did it fuck up? Okay. I didn't do any of that shit. It didn't save any of that. That's annoying. That's really annoying. Did it also? It didn't. It didn't, right? It didn't lose my progress in the actual level. Bit. No, I did save that. Okay. Thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that, indeed. Holy shit. Well, I guess let's redo that. So we have gameplay functions. There's going to need a return node. Whether or not the triggered object contains this little thing. this is going to need to have a destroy if triggered, which by default will be true. All right, then in the letter, we'll add in the actor utils, get GUID, mouse a variable. I guess something maybe went wrong with the array here. Well, we don't need to do all this, actually. That's a little overkill. All that we need to do is we need to set this entire actor hidden in game or not. So, like, let's invert that. So when it's enabled, it's not hidden in game. When it's disabled, it'll be hidden in game. And if default enabled is false, no. And new enabled is true. We trigger objects, self, no, self, thank you. And then on begin play, we check if default enabled is true. If so, we just enable. If false, we check if object was triggered. Target will be self. Can we actually supply that in that it uses the... No. Why would I pass a reference by reference? Sure. Teach me about Lyra, please. I don't know much about Lyra, so I don't think I can do that. So yeah, let's not trigger if it was destroy if it was triggered. And then I think we just kind of do that, right? So yeah, that's everything we just did in the last like 20 minutes within 2 minutes. You see, once you actually have all of your like stuff figured out, executing it is super easy and quick. It's just figuring out how things are going to work. That's the difficult part. So now let's save everything before we try anything. Learn then teach me. I mean, that's kind of my thing, but I'm already doing that with like a bunch of things. So Lyra is an example project as well. So like teaching about Lyra is like very non-specific. Like what specifically are you curious about? I think my gameplay function at the moment only contains like 2 or 3 functions. Yeah, so at the moment this is just a static place that's accessible from... It's a blueprint function library, is what it is. Which means that they're just static functions that are easily accessible. At the moment I only have this like trigger system in here, like add if object was triggered or add if... or check if it was triggered. Gameplay ability system. I have an entire playlist for that, actually. So maybe that's helpful. But this could very much like grow to include other like generalized helper functions. Effectively, I have a bunch of stuff, I think, on my game instance that I made before creating this function library. That might do better, like, existing in here. The upside of a game instance is that it has, like, a world context, and a function library doesn't. So, like, all of this stuff that's happening here is, like, fairly specific to, like, stuff that's happening in the world. So it exists in the game instance. But then we have things like get time as string. This very likely could be in gameplay functions. Doesn't really need to be, like, in the game instance for any specific reason. Maybe even get event has happened. I don't think that this would need to be necessarily in the game instance. So that could exist in gameplay functions as well. But I'm calling this from so many different places already. That's going to be really annoying to move that over. So if I'm going to move that over, I would make this function in here. And then just make this function call whatever function I make here to retrofit it with the code that already uses it. Which might be good to do for going forward. Now I have a playlist about gameplay ability system, I'm sorry. I also have a playlist about, well, like, introductory stuff. It doesn't really cover this type of stuff. This is the type of stuff that's more like you just do it wrong a bunch of times, and every time you do it a little bit less wrong. And it's not necessarily wrong, it's just you start building yourself into a corner by, like, architecting things in weird ways. But that's not really something that you very much learn by, like, getting taught it. That's something you do by doing it wrong, experiencing how annoying the results are, and figuring out, like, where the actual, like, bottlenecks existed so that you don't repeat that next time. So this type of thing is just, like, where does this live? It lives wherever you want it to live, like, wherever it's easy to access, effectively. And depending on the scale of your project, this might matter more or less. If you have, like, a small project that you're working on for, like, a game jam, or that you've been working on for, like, a month, for, like, a longer game jam, or just, like, a fun practice project, that kind of stuff, you probably won't actually run into too many issues stuffing most of your code into, like, 2 or 3 different classes. But as you scale up, that's going to become more and, like, more annoying to deal with. But that's, again, the kind of thing that really only, like, cements in your brain once you have to deal with things going wrong. As annoying as that is. So that's why you make a bunch of smaller projects first, instead of jumping right into, like, your dream game, like, mega MMO RPG with dragons or something like that, which, like, everybody and a mom does when it gets started, is making the dream passion project, which then is way too big to actually do and becomes a mess, and you abandon it, and then you go do, like, a billion other things, and then, like, 10 years down the road you actually pick it back up. Anybody watching this saying, hey, that's exactly my experience? Yes, everybody's had this experience. This is, like, a universal game dev experience. Everybody does that. Everybody gets told not to do that, and then everybody does it anyway, because, again, these are lessons that you learn from fucking it up. This is not something that you learn from somebody telling you. And you can avoid making your, like, first giant game. And that's going to, like, save you one step in that fuck up process. In that you can now fuck up in, like, a bunch of smaller projects that you can still finish. So you still have something to, like, feel progression and feel proud of, and that kind of stuff. instead of feeling dejected. So like that bit, it's still good to just like listen to. But do be aware that the reason that advice is given is because you're expected to make mistakes when you start. And even as you go along, there's never going to be a point where you stop making mistakes. It's just those mistakes become smaller and less fundamental and hopefully easier to deal with. Anyway, let's see if I made a mistake and if this thing crashes again. It doesn't. It's a good start. But I needed to set this thing to being not true. I think I know what the issue might be. The issue is that this thing's GUID is not valid, is it? Is it? Yeah, we need to like move it around a bit. No, hold on. What? Oh, we're not setting the GUID. That's true. So if default enabled is false, this is one of those things, right? Which is actually kind of funny to maybe take a look at. Complex logic. We can make like 2 branches here in a row. Now we check whether or not the default enabled is true. If that's false, we move on to the next one, and then we check if GOD is false, or if that's not valid. Then we like set a new GUID, right? That's not how that works. New GUID. This can be combined though, because we're doing 2 checks here, which is fine. There's no actual, well, I think there's technically like a little bit more processing going on here because it's checking this as 2 different things. But we need to like also like hook this up now and all that kind of stuff. This becomes messy real quick. So what I did a moment ago is what we do instead is we check the not bool. So we check default enabled being not true, and then whether or not our GUID is not true, and then we just combine those with the end boolean. And now it becomes 1 check, which is just easier to read. This doesn't like actually impact anything, but especially if you plan on like learning to code in C++, this becomes infinitely like nicer to like read through in C++. And now this needs to be true instead of false. And you don't need to worry about like connecting up like a bunch of different branching nodes, the true and the false, to a bunch of different places. It's just like 1 check. But that's one of those things. You're going to probably do the chain together branches for a while. And that doesn't like actually hurt anything. It's one of those things that you just, at some point, you're going to get sick of that. I wanted to build my passion project game. I've done some Unity projects and ability to quickly attach scripts, objects, etc. Found very easy. Does Unreal have a steep learning curve? Or does it have a potential workflow for new devs starting? Unreal doesn't quite have the same like workflow as Unity with like its scripting prefab system. Unreal is a lot more inheritance based than Unity is. Unity is heavily composition based, where everything is essentially like a game object that holds different functionality scripts, right? I mean, you can make scriptable object classes that is technically like making your own assets and that kind of stuff. But essentially, like every script that you make is just going to be like a monobehavior script that you put on a game object that like does stuff. Unreal has a class hierarchy. So we have like, you can see the actor as the equivalent to the game object. Everything in your world is an actor. Well, then going off of actors, we have like a bunch of different things. Like there's light actor, right? Which has a component, but it also is well, that's actually a bad example. Let me just, well, there's ladder, for instance. But we'll just like go to a place where like stuff here. If I make a new blueprint, I can choose from like a bunch of different classes. In the end, everything comes back, well, actually everything comes back to just the basic object class. But everything that exists in your world is an actor. And you can make custom objects to make custom assets and that kind of stuff. And there's like entire systems for that. But for now, we have actors, which broadly speaking has the subclass for pawn, which is a possessable thing. Character, which is a very specialized possessable thing. And things that can be possessed are things that either your AI can control or your player can control. We've got player controllers. That's specifically an object type that is dealing with your player inputs and sending it through to whatever it possesses. And then we have got some like game mode stuff. And then we've got components as well. So in the end, you're going to be making up your classes fairly similarly to prefabs with components, with the added benefit of a blueprint being a script in and of itself. So this ladder has a bunch of code on itself. This is not a ladder script that I'm putting on a game object. This ladder does ladder stuff because it is a ladder. And I don't need to reuse that code elsewhere. If I do need to reuse that code elsewhere, I can make components that I put on like different stuff. And you can put those on different classes or even different individual objects. Like if I go into my chest, for instance, which I have open right here, you see this thing has an inventory component. That's a component that I made that like deals with inventory stuff. But my player also has an inventory component. As a matter of fact, I think my player has 3 inventory components. Only 2. Okay, so we've got the normal inventory, and then we've got like a separate inventory for like its usable item slots. But it's got like 2 inventory components. And if I want this specific ladder to have an inventory component, I can go over to like the details panel. And I can say, hey, I'm going to add an inventory component. And now this ladder technically has an inventory component. It's not, I don't know why it would, but you can very much add those components still on a per instance basis. And well, inventory component in my case, can I easily like go to that? I guess. Well, in my case, it's actually all C++ code. So that's probably why I didn't open. So we have, let's see, where is it? Oh, it's down here. In my plugins, inventory, inventory components. I've got my header file, and then in private, I've got inventory components. I've got my CPP file, right? So I've got all, should be able to do all these functions on here, and I can just like access those on anything that has it. I actually like have a video going over all of this as well. I believe I have at some point like Epic. I work with Epic to make like 5 videos, specifically aimed toward Unity developers coming over to Unreal. Maybe like 6 months ago or something like this point, maybe a little bit more. And one of those was about like prefabs and how Unreal like deals with that, because it's not really prefabbing, but it's not as dissimilar as you would think. And if you want to have a highly like composition-based workflow, you can, and you probably should, because that is like more modular and it's more scalable. But in a certain way, I think Unreal offers you the choice between highly composite or highly hierarchical structures, depending on what you personally prefer. I do a little bit of both. But ideally, I would argue that you use a lot of components and then use the classes to just tell those components how to interact with each other. Because that is personally what I sometimes run into with Unity, is you would end up making like these manager scripts to make other scripts communicate like to each other, right? You'd have like a manager script that has like references to a couple of other scripts, and would then like take information from one script and put it in the other one, because you can't make every script be able to like communicate with every other script, which makes sense. But that's kind of what you can use these blueprint classes, or again, you can do this with C++ equally as well. But these like actor classes themselves can kind of function as those manager scripts, or they can have code that is inherent to like that specific thing that doesn't need to be like modularly reused or anything like that. So what were we doing? We were checking the stuff for the letters, right? So yeah, this letter is supposed to not be enabled by default. So if I now open this up, let's actually save everything just in case. And it's gone. Okay, that's fantastic. Now, can I still climb it? Ignore the fact that there's no animation. Can I still climb it? No, but it still does have collision, technically. I guess when it's hidden, it still does have collision, which makes sense. But we could just set actor collision enabled. And that should fix that as well. All right. Very long story short, we now can enable and disable these ladders based on trigger volumes. Fantastic. So, default enabled is going to be false for both of these, and we're going to set up some trigger volumes for them. So the first trigger volume that we're going to do, and this might also be if you're coming over from Unity, like we have all of these different levels. The structure in my game is maybe a little bit weird because I have everything in one big streaming level, and I'm streaming in other levels as I go. But you have specific like blueprints for scripting out specific things in levels, so that you don't have to like make an entire object for that. Like in this level, I just want to have like a trigger volume. So like a trigger box that I'm going to put like right here. And that's just like a trigger box, it's just like a object that Unreal comes with by default. It's just a collider that has like a delegate on it, effectively. So then I open the level blueprint for this level, which is in this case called 2 for platforming. And with that selected, I can just say, well, I don't have that thing selected. Oh, no, I do. Oh, I'm in persistent world. Okay. This is the annoying part about how I have my project set up. Sometimes I put things in the persistent world by accident. But you can just move it. So now I can call the event here for collisions on actor begin overlap. Just going to copy this over. This checks whether or not the thing that's overlapping with is the player character. And if that's the case, what we do is we get that ladder and we enable it. So we select that ladder, get a reference to it, and then we run the enable ladder on it. So we don't need to make like an entire script for this to just like do this very level specific code. We can just use the level blueprint for that to like do the linear level scripting. And that's the kind of thing where Blueprint is really like quite useful and quite cool to work with. So ladder enabled will be true. So now we can test out whether or not that works, because I don't know that it will. But in theory, the idea is that it's not enabled. Then we can do a little bit of platforming, which will be fun. So maybe instead of doing the next room, I'm going to just rework the jumping to add in coyote time, because it's actually really annoying not to have that. Like even playing at like 70 FPS, it just doesn't feel responsive with jumping sometimes. I do see the response in chat. I'm going to respond to that. Oh, fuck. My biggest worry was customization. I feel like since Unreal Engine gives you the ability to script what you need, makes me feel a lot better about C++ still scares me. Yeah, that's kind of the thing, right? In Unity, you need to make a lot of stuff semi from scratch. Not entirely from scratch. It does still offer you a lot of stuff. I would argue that Unreal offers you more out-of-the-box stuff. But in a lot of cases, like with this jumping mechanic, right? The character movement, or maybe even just the movement in general, some class that Unreal just pre-makes for you has a built-in jump function. And that built-in jump function checks whether or not you're currently on the ground, and if so, it lets you jump. And it even has a built-in multi-jump. And I think the character class, it has like a thing for that. Where if you have like a double or a triple jump, it'll like let you jump 2 or 3 times in a row before landing, and then it resets that. It just does all that for you. That's great until you need a more custom implementation of that. In this case, I need a jump which takes in coyote time. At which point, using that built-in jump function, I don't think is going to work anymore, because the built-in jump function for the first jump does check whether or not you are grounded. So I can no longer probably use that built-in jump function. So I need to like rewrite that stuff anyway. But you totally can. And now that ladder is there. That's the thing that we were testing. That ladder being there. And the wonderful thing is, I think if I now save and I reload that, the ladder should still be there. And it is. So that works. As far as C++, like the major thing C++ usually is a little like iffy with is the fact that it doesn't have a garbage collector like C# does built in. But Unreal has a garbage collector. So anything that is no longer actively being used, I have like, a short on this, I believe, as well. How like C++, when something is marked as a U property or whatever, how garbage collection deals with that. But anything that is like a U object, which is effectively any type of object that you're going to be making in C++, you will be aware when you're making something that's not a U object. You won't make a like base non-U object by accident. Whenever nothing else is referencing it anymore, Unreal will add it to garbage collection. So it will just get cleaned up. So you're not going to create like any memory leaks because you forgot to like destroy an object or something like that. There's still the general stuff, like if you have a bunch of references to that object still somewhere and nothing is being cleared out there, it doesn't get garbage collected. But at that point you don't want it to be garbage collected because there's a good chance that you might still be using it. But you won't have any like hanging pending objects that are just taking memory and not being used. Because Unreal does provide that stuff for you. Now, there still is the worry of course, C++ having slightly different syntax in a lot of stuff that you're going to need to get used to if you're going to be moving over to C++ from C#. But in reality, it's not actually like that big a deal, and in a lot of ways, I think I personally like prefer a lot of it because it's a little bit more bespoke in a couple of ways. For like basic syntax stuff. There's also stuff that's annoying. The fact that there's no for each loop that you like declare. If you want to do a for each loop in C++, you just do a for loop with different syntax. Which takes a little bit of getting used to, and like the for each loop, being able to just write that out makes more sense to me. I prefer that. C++ doesn't have that. You just write a for loop with like an array in it for the syntax, essentially. Okay. So there's definitely annoying stuff, but we have like in most programming languages, you just use dot operators for literally everything, right? I think I made a video about like the very thing that I'm about to explain as well. Like if you're trying to get something from a value or from a reference or from statically, you always use a dot operator. In C++, you have, if you have something by value and you try to get something out of it, you use the dot operator because you have that object or that struct and you get something out of it. If something is a pointer, a reference to another object, so you don't have the object directly, you use this little like arrow thing. If you want to get something statically, you use just double colon. But this does make it like very much, once you get used to this, and it does take a bit of getting used to, it makes it very easy to, at a glance, see what type of like stuff is happening here, in my opinion. I really quite like that. There's more stuff to remember, but once you remember it, fine. I actually prefer it. Now, the whole for loop situation still is messed up, man. I don't love that. I won't lie to you. This is a for each loop, right? So for inventory slot reference slots, in inventory slots, we do this. So this is a for each loop. And it's the opposite of what I just said, where it's easier to see at a glance. It's more difficult to see at a glance, because if this was just for each... Is that a thing now? Oh, no, it's just an autofill thing. Okay, so that's just something Writer can do for you. But if I could just write for each, it would be a little bit easier to see at a glance. And I personally very much value being able to just like see roughly what something does at a glance without needing to read it. So that's a little bit annoying. I need to go over everything from pointers, references to for loops, etc. That's like, if you're just doing this within Unreal, the wonderful thing is Unreal expects pointers into certain types of functions. And effectively, it always expects pointers, to be honest with you, because there's no use in passing around like objects by values, because that's insane to do. But you're going to be using a lot of like Unreal Engine made functions, and those just like either take in a pointer or sometimes a reference. Personally, I still don't really within the context of Unreal Engine, I know like software development has a wider scope. The use of pointers or references like is indicative of like who owns an object and that kind of stuff. But you're likely not going to be writing all that stuff yourself if you're just like making a game. So they're pretty interchangeable in use cases. It's just like the memory address of an object. And for the most part, when you're interacting with objects, you're going to be passing around its memory address. Because number one, if you pass it around through value, you're going to be copying it over and you can't edit anything. And number two, you don't want to be passing around like entire objects because that would be wasteful. But by and large, like, it's kind of hard to fuck up because Unreal expects you to just like give in parameters for like pointers or parameters in some cases. And it expects you to like, and it gives like return values of pointers or references or values. So if you do something wrong, it's going to tell you. It's just a lot. I get it. There's a lot of like little things to worry about. So I guess we place the next trigger box over here. Like a million little things still is a lot. To be honest with you, the fact I'm taking time out of the stream to help you also is, well, because I like helping people first and foremost. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing any of this. But because I like have literally zero brain power to actually like do anything productive, and I am very distractible at the best of times. Especially sad today. Anyway, you have a good meeting. Or a bad one. I mean, I'm not your mom. So where's the other letter? There. And with that, with like a pretty big detour, but that's what we do here. It's tradition. We have both letters now functional, theoretically. I do want to check whether or not this letter is like needlessly using a GUID. It's not. That's fantastic. Okay. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Okay, so that means that we're going to move on to the next level, which is the pre-boss room, I believe. Why are you all the way the fuck over there? Well, no, that actually kind of makes sense. No, it doesn't. That's the central long room, entrance hall. Oh, yeah, no, that does make sense because the pre-boss room is entered through the... Yeah. 10. So yeah, anyway, if you're still hanging out, let's try level, good. Go check out some videos, and if you have any more questions, either like drop in with the next stream or drop into the Discord where either me or anybody else who feels like doing anything can answer questions. Okay, so like physically, what's going on? Like, where are we spatially? Spatially, we're here. So I'm going to put this one right there. I don't have any plans for this, really. So let's figure this out together. So we're going to make it into a box at first, and then we'll go from there, I guess. It essentially only needs to have like a save point. And 2 doors. So this might be big enough. Shouldn't be too big. Especially since what we just made here is like actually just straight up a huge level. I feel like I might be overcompensating, or not overcompensating enough, actually, in making this thing too big now. Well, we can figure it out. That's okay. Let's put a level door in there. Not a trapdoor. It's a different thing. Good enough. It's not centered at all, though. I think that's pretty symmetrical. I think that's pretty near the center, I think. And if not, sue me, I guess. Put in another checkpoint. Yeah, so this will then be a door that leads to the boss room. So it'll be a door that's about twice the size. I think it might be 3 times the size in the other dungeon. I'll have to go check. But no, this seems pretty normal. This will be blocked off by something that checks whether or not you've got all the keys. But for now, it's just going to like kind of hang out here and be there. And then we'll also need to have a door in this direction that goes into fucking some level somewhere. I don't think I have a level for that yet. Do I? I don't. So for now, this is just going to exist outside. So you can't accidentally access it. So yeah, there's kind of like everything there is to it, not gonna lie. This doesn't need to be a big room. I, matter of fact, prefer if it wasn't a big room. I do need to also go check if the other thing works. But for now, let's see if the door here works first. It does, and I think that is a pretty good size, actually. Yeah. Let's not go through there, because that's going to just end up with me falling into the void. Don't want to have that happen. Let's do the platforming to see if the other ladder also works. It should, but you never know. Always gotta double, triple, quadruple check that kind of stuff. I'm still so happy with like the little trigger volume that we set up. That means that we just get this platform kind of given to us the moment we walk in here. That was an amazing idea that I had. Sometimes I have good ideas. It's very rare, but sometimes I do. Ah, god damn it. I'm also playing this with a keyboard, I should point out. There's also no reason for me to actually, like, go back here, because I think you can just, like, jump right up on there. Yeah. Oh, you can. Oh, that's kind of messed up, man. Okay. Don't worry about that too much. It's also kind of fine if some of the platforming can be a little bit cheese, because I'm not making a platformer here. I'm just making a game with platforming in it. That is seemingly the same thing, but there's a small difference there, and that is that the main... That's too much. There is a small difference there, and that is that the main like gameplay of the game still very much is all about combat. And the platforming is just a little bit of a distraction, let's say. not really a distraction, more of just something to mix it up. Personally, I really like the way that like a game like Hollow Knight does it, and that's frankly way better level design than I could probably ever do. But the way that Hollow Knight does it, the way that I like to describe it anyway, is that platforming is a part of that game, but it's not the goal of the game. Right? Platforming is just the way you get around in Hollow Knight. Whereas in a game like Mario, literally any Mario ever, platforming is the point. Like, that's the reason you're playing the game, is to do the platforming ahead in time. Fucking any platformer ever. That's just like the whole point of the game. So the platforming itself needs to be like more engaging, a little bit more tight, and a little less cheesable. In games like Hollow Knight, the platforming is there so that you aren't just walking in like straight flat roads. And that's kind of what I'm going for with a lot of my platforming as well. That's an streaming level. That's what I'm going for with a lot of my platforming as well. Aside from these levels that are like for platforming, these are a little bit more like platforming focused, but still, since it's not a platforming game, I don't want to make it like too like in-depth, too difficult potentially. And I also want to add in a little bit more platforming for exploration's sake, right? Finding secrets, finding extra items, finding like maybe secret super fights or whatever. In a very like Kingdom Hearts 1 type of way. Where I'll show you a level in a moment that we made a while ago that kind of like dives into that idea a little bit. Because I like the way that Kingdom Hearts 1 does its like world design. I'm playing through the entire series, well, everything that has a level 1 run, reasonably. At the moment, doing level 1 runs of all the games because I want to mostly analyze their like boss behavior. And if I just play through on any other type of run, I just absolutely tear through these fuckers. So I figured let's do just level 1 runs, because there's no way that you're doing a level 1 run without like thoroughly analyzing a boss's behavior, because you need to be able to know how it reacts to literally everything you do. In Kingdom Hearts 1, that oftentimes does come down to finding exploits in their behavior, I will admit. And in Kingdom Hearts 2, that does come down to getting frustrated by the fact that this game is very not designed for you to not be able to get hit more than once. Because everything is just an instant kill. But that's besides the point. Because yes, the game wasn't designed to be played at level 1. Fucking shocker. Like, that probably shouldn't be a thing, right? What I just did. But I like the way that the world design in Kingdom Hearts 1 is done. It's a lot like tighter than any of the more modern games. Kingdom Hearts 3 does kind of reintroduce some of the exploration stuff back in, because the worlds are so much more bigger and more expansive. But the way that Kingdom Hearts 1 is like very tightly designed as far as like their level design goes is... Oh, the ladder has spawned. Nice. It's actually really interesting. And I actually have decided what I'm going to do with the last dungeon, because I haven't really... I have an entire map sketch drawn out for like the dungeon layouts and where every room is going to be and how they connect up to each other for like the entire game. Aside from the last dungeon that I haven't made yet, because I didn't really have an idea as to what I would do with it. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to make Wonderland from Kingdom Hearts 1, because I love that shit. Kingdom Hearts 1 Wonderland is effectively like 4 rooms. But one of those rooms can be experienced from like 6 different perspectives. And when I say 6 different perspectives, I mean 6 different perspectives. let's see if I have it installed right now. And if I have a save file that can like get me to Wonderland. Because it is actually fantastic. And I'm going to 1000% steal that ID. I actually did a game with this ID for the GameDevCave Game Jam last year. And I think I'm going to take that concept and make it less shittily implemented, because it was very shittily implemented in that Game Jam game, because it was a Game Jam game. And make that the concept for the dungeon that I haven't designed yet. Because I like that kind of stuff. It's also some like real MCS type shit. I don't know if I have a save file on here. Because I've been playing on my Steam Deck on the Steam version. I own this game way too many times, by the way. I own it for PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and twice for PC. I own this game 5 times. Which is a bit stupid. But at least I don't have it on Switch. And I don't need it on Switch because I have it on my Steam Deck. Which doesn't run through the cloud. So that is objectively better. Aladdin's house. Ship cabin? Yeah, sure. Castle Chapel. Let's just take this one. I don't have my controller hooked up. Let's see if it recognizes it after the facts. It might not. And it might not do it because it's not through Steam, actually. We'll see. It does recognize it. Okay, so welcome to Kingdom Hearts 1. Make me think of Metroid Prime. I've never played that. There's platforming, but it's mostly exploration 3D space. Yeah, so that's kind of what I like, is when platforming. I also like platforming for the sake of platforming, to be like very clear. I like 3D platformers. It's legitimately one of my favorite genres. But I like it when other games introduce platforming just as a means of traversal, because otherwise you have these like very flat rooms. So this is the room that I was talking about, right? You have this room, and this is just... Technically you have this room twice, because if we murder all these enemies, I can drink one of these drinks and I can like be big in this room. At normal scale, because I'm like very small now, right? But if I go and I go over in this direction, we have a few different other ways of entering that room through this forest. So if I go all the way up here and I go in through this entrance, it's the same room, but now I'm walking on one of the walls. It's the exact same room. And it's not just the same, like, models. Well, it is just the same models rotated, don't get me wrong, but... if I go over, let's say... I'm so overpowered for this part of the game. Because all the enemies haven't increased in strength yet. That trigger, I haven't done that on this save apparently. But you can see that we have like this little vase here, right? That is flat. And it was flat in the previous version of the like right side up room as well. If I now do this, it becomes big. And you can kind of see where this is going, right? When I go back to the right side up version of the room, it'll also be big. And for this vase, that doesn't really like actually matter, because nothing actually interesting happens with it, and nothing happens actually with anything anywhere at all here. But that becomes an exit into like a different area. Now we have this, which usually is just like a little bit of an oven where you can like get an item or something, I believe. From this perspective, it's a door to a different version of this room again. And now we're on the opposite wall, on the other side of the room, where I can kill some enemies, And I, as you see, knock that teddy bear down to this little like chair here. And there's like just a bunch of fun stuff that you can do with that, right? So I can go to here, and if all the enemies are dead, that's then also a entrance to yet another perspective on this room. I can exit through here back to the forest. There's like a room that's interconnected with itself. Oh yeah, so that gets me back to where I like just came from. But yeah, we have the teddy bear that's now sitting on there, right? So if we now go back to the normal version of the room again, which we can get to somehow, some way. I don't know why I started playing Kingdom Hearts instead of actually like doing level design. Well, I guess I'm showing off what I'm going to be like doing with my level design. Normal version of the room, you can see the teddy bear is now on that chair, which is interactive. So it effectively just keeps a progress. And I think that that's a pretty good idea to like